Welcome to the Coach Santiago Podcast, where Coach Santiago shares his expert knowledge of athletic development, coaching tips, advice for parents of athletes, and how you can turn your passion for the sport into your business. Coach Santiago has over a decade of experience and has worked with over 2,500 athletes with programs generating over $10 million in sales and $2.5 million in college scholarships since 2003. We hope you enjoy each episode, and remember, coaching is an action, not a position.
All right, guys, welcome to the Coach Santiago Podcast, where we talk about all things that have to do with amateur sports, the world of business in regards to youth sports, and things of that nature, trying to give everyone as much information, whether you're a parent and you've got an aspiring athlete coming through the process, or you're a coach and you're looking to get into coaching, or you're a person who's always had a fascination for sports and you want to get involved in the business side of sports with pro teams or college teams or anything like that. Today we've got a great special guest, a young man that I met a couple of years ago. He really impressed me with, the way he kind of carries himself, very mature for a young man, and just a great, great guy. We wanted to bring him on the show. I think he's got some really cool stuff to share with everyone in regards to the sports management major. And without any further ado, Mr. Joe Barroso, welcome to the show.
Thank you, DJ. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, man. So before we get into it, man, just tell the world who you are, where you come from. Just let us know kind of where you're at in the process of completing some of your dreams in the world of athletic sports, and just tell us a little bit about where you are and kind of where you came from.
Well, most young professionals in the industry, I'm still trying to put together my career, and I'm from Ypsilanti, Michigan. It's just outside of Ann Arbor. It's maybe 35 minutes from Detroit. When I was in high school, I was, of course, everybody plays something. My interest was baseball. Really loved baseball, and I was a realist, though. I understood, my skills as a player weren't going to carry me into college. So, my senior year, I played. I enjoyed myself. I really had a great time, but I kind of had to focus on coaching. I wanted to get into coaching because I knew that'd be the future for me. I didn't really want to leave the sport. I wasn't sure what I wanted to major in either, but I knew it had something to do with baseball. So I started coaching when I'm a freshman in college after I graduated from high school. Eventually the coaching just kind of bled into my academic pursuits, and I decided, this would be great. Sports is an industry, with enough connections, with enough knowledge, I should be able to, and of course hard work, I should be able to, put together a career. And if not, I could always do something else that is related to sports, given how similar it is to a business. So I majored in sport management at Eastern Michigan University, again, located in Ypsilanti. I managed to reach out to a few individuals. Specifically, there was a service offered by Mr. Garrick Ross, a previous guest of your show, and I reached out to him. He gave me some insight into what, working in sports is like, specifically baseball, and he managed to arrange for me, and I managed to acquire a position with the Eastern Michigan baseball team. So for 3 years as an undergrad, I'm one of the guys in, team shirt and team shorts, picking up baseball, setting up machines, getting practice ready for the coaches. And I don't know, I genuinely believe that I could have joined any fraternity, I could have joined any club or any kind of intramural team, but this was really such a unique experience. I managed to be part of a Division I baseball program, but I didn't have the privilege of playing, but it was still an honor really to be involved with that. So I did that for 3 years, learned a lot. We had a coaching change. I met a couple different people in the industry in Division I baseball. Derek was still in the background. I was helping him with a few things that he wanted for his business. And when I graduated in 2016 from Eastern Michigan, I finished with a degree in sport management and a minor in business. Derek approached me and said, "Hey, I have this new business. It's a player representation, player advisement. It's a holistic sports agency. We want to, go forth and see what we can do in this area, specifically in Michigan." And I was brought on as a coordinator of baseball operations once I graduated. And from there, I've learned so much, again, even more than when I learned at undergrad about, relationships and business and trust. And, really these athletes, they play and they work very hard, and it's up to, people in business, in law now, that are going to be able to do the hard things for them to get them where they want to go financially and professionally. So after a few months of working with him in 2016, I decided, hey, I want to go to law school. I want to learn how these contracts work, how employment, in professional sports works. And I decided to enroll in law school, and I was accepted by the University of Toledo, and I enrolled last fall. So I just completed my first semester at the University of Toledo last year, starting the second semester coming up. So I'm very, very excited about what the opportunities exist in the future. I do know there are advantages that present itself as an attorney in any industry you work in, but specifically sports, because of the varying degree of wealth that you can acquire if you're a successful athlete, and how lawyers can leverage those things for their athletes. So it's just kind of snowballed from being very interested as a young player in how baseball works, and the administration of it led to, working in it, leading to working with actual players in the minor leagues and everything. So it's been a very interesting journey since the end of high school, but these last 6-7 years since I've put together my little career it's opened my eyes to a lot of different things, and I've really been blessed to be able to meet great people like Derek, like you, DJ, and it's truly been wonderful.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Sounds like you've had a fascination with baseball since you were a young man. Is that a pretty accurate statement?
Yeah, I definitely say it's a pretty accurate statement.
Cool, man. Cool. Well, that kind of leads me to my next question. So, here you are, this young man. You got a fascination with baseball. You love playing baseball. I understand you basically, from what you just shared with us, you were looking at coaching versus really, getting involved as an agent or somebody who's going to be looking over pro contracts. How did you make that choice? I mean, what led you? Talk more about, go a little bit deeper with us on how you actually made that decision to say, hey, you know what? I don't want to be on the field. I don't want to necessarily coach. I want to be a little bit more of a suit and tie guy and just, get involved more on the business side, maybe look at some pro contracts, look at some pro deals, and get involved on that side of it. How did you make that decision?
Well, my long-term career pursuit, and this is something that, I think every professional needs to have, it might seem silly to have a long-term 25, 30-year goal where you ultimately want to end up. But for me, I figure, I would want to have a goal that may seem unattainable for other people, but if it's attainable for me, I believe I can get there, and I believe I can, be successful. My goal is to be a general manager or a team executive, a team president for a Major League Baseball club. And this, it's amazing what the internet can do. Because I'll go through and I'll Google and I'll search some of these general managers, these team presidents. I'll find their backgrounds. And a lot of it's very much the same. These guys are involved in business. These guys are involved in a little bit of sport management. Law is another big one. And, when I was 19 years old and I was a sophomore in college, this is all I thought about. So I'm coaching high school kids and I'm working for Eastern Michigan's baseball team. And I figured, let me take it a step further. I almost made it a point where I wanted to have experience in baseball at every single facet of the game. I had played in high school. I had now coached. I had also umpired before I went to high school. I had done PA system. I had done, student manager duties. I had, done pretty much everything that's behind the scenes. I figured, what's left, but I want to do the administrative work. I want to see what that looks like. And, those are the things that they also do happen to be very lucrative, and that is a plus. But I genuinely enjoy baseball from pretty much all angles of the game, whether I'm giving signals down at third base or I'm taking my lead at first base or, I'm calling pitches from the dugout. I wanted to see, a finished product, not only coaching, but from, hopefully one day from an executive suite where a team that I constructed with, all the knowledge that I've built up is going to be successful. So I can't say exactly when that switch flipped and I wanted to work in the boardroom as opposed to working on the field, but I know I definitely wanted to cover all the facets of the baseball game.
Okay, yeah, it's just an interesting decision, and I feel like not everyone's cut out for coaching. Being a former player myself, I decided to go the other route. I decided to get into coaching, whether it was at the professional level or college level or even the youth travel level. And it's a much different lifestyle. I try to share that with people all the time that, there are two sides of this game, and you can get involved on the more management side of it. And it's a different life experience. It's a different work-life balance. It's a different experience. But, there's definitely people who are in coaching that probably should be focused on the management side, and there's probably people on the management side that should be focused on their passion, which is actually being on the field with the players. So I think it's very mature that, you were able to establish that, make that decision early, rather than, what I see a lot of times in the marketplace where somebody spends 4 or 5 years, being a coach or being, somebody that's a part of the field personnel, and then realizes, at the age of 35 or 40 that they really want to be involved in management and all that. So that's an interesting decision, and especially, you making it so young. So that being said, okay, so you make this decision, you're a young man, and I'm sure you had an opportunity to kind of get your feet wet. You mentioned some stuff at Michigan you did, and some stuff with Pivotal Sports. Talk more about some really cool experiences that you've had, and kind of talk about some things that you've learned while going through that process, as far as your time now working with some of these companies. So tell us a little bit, first, what companies you've worked with, some of the stuff you've done, and then kind of what you learned based on these jobs that you've had.
Yeah, no, I when I started at Eastern Michigan, it was fall of 2013. So in the spring of 2014, that was the actual season that we worked. I worked under head coach Jay Alexander. He had been there for a few years, and actually it was kind of an interesting. It was interesting that I was working for him because when I was a kid in middle school, I used to go to his baseball camps with my brother, and for some reason, he and his staff, obviously they run the camps and everything, they remembered us very distinctly because we'd come every year, and it was just me and him, and I guess they recognized the two brothers together, and it was very, kind of full circle to come back and work with him now as an undergrad at, 18, 19 years old, and it was, a little surreal to work for him, and what I learned under him is that, and especially once we did have a coaching change and I did work for another coach, there's a lot of different management styles. And, as an employee, you got to really know, exactly what kind of give and take your boss is going to have with you and everything. And especially, too, there were individuals that you had to work with to get stuff done, and really it didn't, during practice. And it didn't really matter who did it or how it was done, just as long as it was done for the coaches. So, elements of teamwork, elements of, responsibility and accountability were there, not just for the players and showing up for weightlifting and showing up to practice, but for, student managers that I worked with and how we interacted with the coaching staff and everything. And in 2014, going into 2015, we had like I said, we had a coaching change. I worked for Mark Vandermeed, the former pitching coach at Michigan State. He came in and he was a lot different, but he was also very similar in many of the same respects. Completely different staff, but the baseball operations staff was still the same, meaning me and the other student managers, we were still around. In fact, the head coach said that he really kind of needed us because he didn't really know how the program functioned on a day-to-day basis, especially like a mid-major like Eastern Michigan. Again, learning different styles, how different people interact with each other. And I got the opportunity to travel with the team more as the years went on. And I really found that I had an undiscovered taste for travel. That's one thing where, it might not be fun to be on a bus for, 4.5 hours as we head down to Columbus for a midweek game against Ohio State, but I had never been to Ohio State. I'd never been to Columbus. And, it's just interesting how the perspective can differ between, a guy who's been there before, one of the players who's been down to a certain location before, and someone who hasn't traveled before and has seen these things. That prompted, traveling and everything once the season was over. And that prompted a few different things where not just within taking classes or working for the team, but I decided to try to network on my own on the road. So I ended up taking a trip to the winter meetings in 2015, to try to find a job in Major League Baseball, network with people that I knew. My brother and I actually attended a function where Dave Dombrowski, the Tigers president at the time, was present. We spoke to him, and I had a few different interactions with him, and it's just one of those things where, again, like the classroom can teach you things, and work experience can teach you things, but if you don't supply it with additional experiences that you pull from the classroom or pull from work experience, it might not be able to be as fruitful. So, some of those lessons that I've learned working at Eastern Michigan and working, on my own, traveling and trying to, network with people, it really was very natural when Derek called me and wanted to bring me in, because Derek's very much the same. He's willing to travel to go meet with somebody if it's going to establish a relationship and build trust. And oftentimes we find ourselves on the road meeting with people, that a potential client or a client that actually is ours already, just to strengthen up the client relationship. So I've learned a lot of things, like I said, that can't really be taught in the classroom, and not necessarily taught in the job market either. But I've taken it upon myself to try to turn these experiences into things that I can do on my own, that I can learn even more from on my own as well.
Okay, so give us an example of what it sounds like you've had a lot of experience, working with college baseball teams. So give us an example of what let's assume we're in season, right? So we've got games on the schedule, we've got practice on the schedule. Give me an idea of what it would be like the day of that game that you're going from Eastern Michigan to Ohio State. Just give me an idea of what your day looked like from start to finish, kind of what your role was, before the game, during the game, after the game.
Yeah, well, given the responsibilities of the student managers, we would have to be there before anybody else. So let's say we'll start from the first pitch and work our way back. First pitch, let's say, is at 7 p.m. in Columbus. I can't think off the top of my head how long it takes to get there, but I'll say it takes 4 hours from Ypsilanti, Michigan. So that means we have to leave at the absolute latest. Oh, and then also, too, you have to factor in batting practice, pregame stuff. So we probably want to get in maybe around 4:30 or 5. That necessitates a 11:30 or a 12 noon leave from Eastern Michigan. So there are things that have to be done before we leave on the bus to go down there. So we'd have to get in probably, I'd say, around maybe 8:30 or 9 in the morning, make sure all the uniforms are taken care of, make sure all the equipment that we need for the game is available, make sure if the coaches need anything specific, that's available. We also have some certain amenities, little snacks, a little bit of nourishment for the guys on the way down there. So there's a variety of things that need to be done before the game. We need to make sure that those things happen before they even show up. That way, players are coming in, dropping off maybe a school bag, and then grabbing their equipment and getting on the bus. That way, everything is streamlined. Everything's moving pretty quickly before we take off. So get this stuff prepared. It takes a few minutes to load up the bus and be accountable for 32 to 35 players. The coaches have their own stuff, but anything that, again, like I said, anything that they need, we have to make sure we have it there. Of course, we also have to call and make sure that the bus is coming, because there are times when you charter a bus, there's a mishap, there's a mistake. A lot of times that falls on the operations guy. So, again, you have to call to make sure that they're there. And by the time 11:30 or 12 noon rolls around, boom, bus is packed, guys are on, we're off. We're traveling down, depending on how long the trip may be. If it's 4 hours, like to Ohio State, I think we have a snack or some sort of food on the bus that's delivered to to EMU before we leave, so that they can eat while we take off. But we've taken trips that are longer than that. We went down to West Virginia by bus, and we had to make various stops to use the restroom, get a bite, that kind of thing. So. Again, plan for these kind of intermittent stops along the way. Look up any kind of traffic issues or, highway issues on the way down there. Kind of assist the bus driver with whatever. He's just driving. It's just kind of, our instruction on how he's supposed to get down there. So once we get in, again, there's assigned tasks for everybody. The operations staff helps unload the bus, gets everything set up. The coaches have a certain plan of action that they want to do at the stadium. Of course, given that we're a visiting team, we don't have privileges for everything, but we still have a corner of the outfield that we can use for bunting, or, the pitchers will throw in mini pens before the game will start, or anything like that. We got to make sure that stuff is set up while the players are still getting off the bus. Set up everything, make sure that we have everything in order. And then comes the really almost the most important part. We have to set up video capturing and statistical documents for the game. So one of us has a radar gun behind home plate, getting how fast the velocity of the pitches is for our pitcher. Looking at the strike zone evaluation for hitters. Looking at quality at bats, measuring that. We have everybody, all the student managers and the operations staff who unloaded this stuff. Once it's all taken care of and put away before the game starts, they got to, again, assume their position in the stands and start recording this information. So game starts, play, we record everything. Once everything's, documented and the game's completely over, often the team will have a post-game meeting, and we'll go over whatever happened. Meanwhile, we're scurrying around, making sure everything's packed up, everything's taken care of. It's on the bus. Lastly, the players come out, they grab their own gear, they get on the bus, and we're supposed to supply the head coach and the other corresponding coaches with the data for the game. Hey, this is what we did with runners in scoring position. This is what the pitcher did with a first pitch strike. Make sure that those guys have that information on the bus. They can review it on the way home. And then again, if there is another stop on the way home, we're in charge of per diem for these guys so that they have money, purchase a little snack on the way home or whatever the case may be. And once we get back to Ypsilanti after, a 2-hour game, it's 9 o'clock. You go back, it's maybe 1 in the morning. Unload the bus once we get back to Eastern. The guys get in their cars and take off. We got to make sure that the laundry is taken care of. That might be another 90 minutes to another 2 hours, and it's a long day. And once the laundry's completely done, it might be 2 a.m. or we might be able to do that the next morning at maybe 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. Do laundry from the night before if it's way too late in the evening. So it is a full day, commitment. It's a long, task. You got to make sure you're up for it. But, these guys, they need to focus on the baseball aspect when they're, as a student athlete and as coaches, they got to make sure that they're focused on that aspect, not, hey, where's the data for this, or, are we going the right way to get down to the university? So we are, as operations staff, we're a stopgap, and we got to make sure that those things are taken care of. But it's a long day. It can definitely be a long day.
Wow. That's all I'm going to say about that. That is, for those of you listening to this, that is the life of a student manager, which is where a lot of people who want to get involved in the management side of any sport are going to start their career. And, it's a really cool segue. Thank you so much for sharing that, because it's a really cool segue to my next question and my next topic, which was, reality versus, either what they teach you in school or what you might think, you're seeing on TV. You talk about guys like Dave Dombrowski or, any of these guys that you might see on an NBA team or an MLB team or an NFL team that are front office people. They're somewhat celebritized, and the only time you see them is on TV on game day in a suit, eating peanuts in a luxury box. And I think a lot of people think that's what being, a part of the management side is all about. So I really, really, appreciate you sharing that with us. And so that being said, you've been through the school side of it, right? At this point, you've got your undergraduate degree, or your graduate degree. You're working on your graduate degree in law, and so you've got your 4-year degree under your belt. Talk a little bit now that you've kind of gotten through some education. You've gotten through some experiences, with work, and you've got some real life tangible stuff. What are some of the differences that you can share with everyone listening that you kind of looked at it as a player, going back to your 17, 18, 19-year-old self? What did you look at there, and what have you really found to be the reality? If you're going to go on this journey and become part of a management team, whether it's with the college or pro team or whatever, and if you've got some aspirations on being, the next general manager of the Atlanta Braves or whatever the case might be, talk a little bit about the reality now that you've been through it, you've gotten some real life experience. What are some of the things that you've kind of been able to say, okay, I thought it was like this, but it's really like that, and I thought this was going to be like this, and the reality is like that. Share that with me.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest noticeable things for me is, like you said, you turn on television and you see, the guys are on the field, and then when the game's over, oh, all right, that's a post-game show, thanks, we'll see you tomorrow. It's very, they show you everything that happens, and there's no behind the scenes. They might show a general manager, like you're saying, in the press box and everything, but there's so much that leads up to that I was maybe not unaware of, but I didn't realize the gravity of how much goes into it. A lot of people think sports it's like Hollywood. Technically it is. It's entertainment. It's live action entertainment, and this game. It's literally a game that's being played, and it's meant to be fun and everything. But what I was reminded of in school really was that this is every team in Major League Baseball, and basically any team in sports, they're a multi-billion-dollar, multinational corporation. It's this industry that we work in sports. It's a business, and you always hear that when a player gets traded or when a player signs a contract or something. But really, the reality of it, especially as if I want to work in the front office as a general manager, as a team president, it really is a business. And business, as I'm sure you're very well aware of, is predicated on relationships. So while some of these, it's you see trades or you see contract signing and it almost seems cold-blooded, or there's no emotion attached to it, or it's a guy who would have played for a team for 10 years signs a contract with a different team, and again, there's no emotion that's involved in it. There absolutely is. It's, again, it's all predicated on relationships. It's all predicated on trust. And I think what's helped me in, once I realized that, what's helped me in my career is just people involved in sport management, at least from the classroom perspective. They all pretty much came from a bunch of different walks of life. There's not there's not a ton of the same student. Everybody has a different interest. I mean, I wanted to do sport management from an administrative perspective. There were other people who wanted to be athletic directors, or they wanted to run a travel basketball program, or they wanted to be in charge of a marketing department for sports, or just varying levels of interest in sports at different levels, at amateur, at collegiate, at professional levels. And what's really helped me is when I was in the classroom and I'm hearing my classmates answer questions, and I have professors who have different experiences in sports. It has allowed me to realize just how diverse and how the kaleidoscope that sports is. You're going to have to deal with a bunch of different people. And given that sports is a business and it's predicated on relationships and trust, if you can get along with a bunch of different people, if you can, have a conversation, even if it's small talk, just build rapport with people, I think you're going to be successful. And, I'm still working through my career. I mean, I'm only 23 years old. I'd like to think I have a lot of years left in the industry to, really build myself up and build up the businesses that I work for. But I think one of my strengths is to be able to talk to people and be able to relate to people from varying levels of background. So, that to me is kind of the most striking thing that I didn't really realize when I entered into it, that you're going to be talking to a bunch of different people, men, women from a bunch of different backgrounds. And if you can have even a small conversation, that could lead to a business conversation. That could lead to a relationship kind of conversation. And if you're good at those things, I think you ultimately could, you could be very successful in business as long as you can get along with varying degrees of people.
Gotcha. No, that's those are, all great points. Again, I think that's the where the rubber kind of meets the road for some people is when when academics kind of stops and you kind of get that sports management degree. And you've seen these guys, I've seen them by the dozens, where they've got this sports management degree, but they don't really have the skills necessary, or they haven't worked on the skills, or they haven't looked into the skills that it really takes to become somebody that can use that degree effectively and actually springboard their career to the opportunities that you, for example, have as in regards to being a big league management team member. So I think that what I'm gathering from what you're sharing with us is not just to focus on the X's and O's you're going to learn in the classroom. Get out there, get some real life experiences, get out of your comfort zone, meet some people, ask what they're doing to be successful, if they are currently doing something that you might see yourself doing down the road, and just become engaging in that fact. So that's very, very, very sound advice. Last question, I know you got to get out of here. If you were to get a phone call tomorrow from the next Joe Barroso, who's 17 years old and realizes that he's not going to be the next Alex Rodriguez and be the number one draft pick overall, he may not even have the ability to play varsity baseball, but he loves the game. He just has a strong passion. He's been dreaming about it, but he just realizes that athletically he doesn't have the DNA to be an elite athlete. What would you tell him if he had a strong desire to stay around the game? What would be your advice now that you're 23, he's 17? What would be your advice to him in regards to sticking around the game and potentially a different capacity as you have? That's a great question. I think first and foremost,
this is a question that I think a lot of people have to answer, not just in baseball, but I think you have to answer two questions. First, you have to say, what do I like to do? So I would first say, within baseball, what do you like to do? Obviously, playing is not going to work out. Are you interested in umpiring? Are you interested at, coaching it? Again, from my perspective, perhaps being the front office one day. Do you want to work in stadium ops, security, the customer service? I mean, there's a lot of different things that go into baseball. What are you, interested in? What do you like to do? And then the second question would be, what are you good at? Because you might want to be the best general manager. You might want to, run the team. But if you're not good at it, you're either not going to get that opportunity, or you're unfortunately going to have a short-lived opportunity. So really there has to be a balance that's struck between what you like to do, what you want to do, and what you're good at. And if you can find that balance, and this is not just in baseball, this is pretty much for any 17 or 18-year-old student who is determining what to major in or what to pursue, if you can strike that balance, I think you can be very successful. I know for me, this is I'll delve into a short story here. I understand, Dave Dombrowski, when he was the Tigers president, he attended Western Michigan University, and to me it always struck me as, hey, you look at some of these other general managers and they have these, incredible educational backgrounds from either Ivy Leagues or Stanford or the University of Michigan, or, just very, very accomplished academic backgrounds. And I don't think it's a knock against Western Michigan, but if I'm a student at Eastern Michigan and I'm looking at a fellow school that's within the same conference, same academic standards and everything, and I see that one of their alumni is running a Major League Baseball team, that's inspiring to me. So what I did, I can't remember how old I was, but I reached out and I found that Mr. Dombrowski had written a master thesis when he was a senior at Western Michigan, and it was entitled The General Manager, the Man in the Middle. It was a thesis on the state of the game and how the duties and responsibilities of a general manager. So I reached out to a couple journalists who had done some reports on it, didn't get any traction with them, and eventually I reached out to Western Michigan's Archives Center, and they contacted him and said, hey, there's a young man that wishes to take a look at what you've written. And he actually got back to Western Michigan, who got back to me, and I managed to access, his thesis, and it's brilliant. It's I know it was written, probably 25, 30 years ago, but there's a lot of insightful things in there. Now, listed with it was the professor that helped him with writing this thesis, and his name was Dr. Dave Roselle. So obviously I can't have a conversation with Dave Dombrowski about this. He's very busy. I reached out to Dr. Roselle, and now, retired from Western Michigan. The main point of what I want to stress here is Dr. Roselle told me there's nothing in the classroom that Dave learned, and there's nothing in the classroom that you can learn about baseball. You have to educate yourself and become a student of the game, because eventually you're going to be speaking the same language as some of these executives, as some of these people who are working in the industry. And it doesn't matter how many classes you take. It doesn't matter how much you pay in credits to learn from people who, maybe have done this. You have to go and find it for yourself. You have to really become a student of the game, whether that's watching games or learning statistics, or now in the modern era, learning computer systems or sabermetrics, or maybe a more sophisticated route like I'm doing, law. You have to do that on your own. You have to take those steps on your own, because the reason why he's successful is not because he took, Dave Roselle's class. It's because he submerged himself in the game and really did it all on his own. So the main crux of this is you have to go get it, not just academically or professionally, but you have to do research on your own, just network and, work hard and come up with ways that basically a third avenue besides school and work that you can learn from and determine how you can be successful through that. So that's got to be my number one thing. Don't just rely on school and rely on your job. You got to really search for it on your own.
Wow, that's a very profound story you tell there, and man, this has just been a great interview because again, I think a lot, what I see a lot of coming from more of the coaching side is, I've got 18, 19, 20-year-old young men who are entering college and they take sports management as a major. And you and I have talked, off air about this, and it's just like, okay, well, why are you taking that? Well, I want to stay in sports. I want to, coach. I want to be a Division I baseball coach or a basketball coach or whatnot. And so, what they don't tell you when you take that, particular degree is exactly what you just said. Is there's some blocking and tackling that you're going to learn inside the classroom, but at the end of the day, you got to get out there, you got to meet people, you got to get life experiences, and you've got to kind of get your feet wet because that's a whole nother side, that's a whole nother craft. Just because you know your sport does not mean that a major league organization, or an NFL organization, or an NBA organization is going to give you a job. There's a big difference between playing and coaching or being in the management side. So I love what you're sharing with us. This is very powerful information. So, well, hey man, great having you on the show. I really, hopefully this wasn't, too much like an interrogation, but I know you're an aspiring attorney now, so you should probably feel at home with a minor interrogation like this. But I just felt like it was very important for you to share your story with our followers and our listeners, because there are a lot of kids out there that are looking down that road and saying, hey, my career is about to be over, whether it's at the college level, pro level, and nobody really talks about how to bridge that gap or what they can possibly do and what that looks like. So I really appreciate you sharing that with us, and those are key words of wisdom. If anybody's looking to connect with you, I'm sure you've got some profiles on LinkedIn. Is there any information you want to share in regards to if anybody wants to reach out to you? Maybe you're just a potential mentor or, have some questions. Where can they find you?
Yeah, no, I am on LinkedIn. It should come up. Just type in Joseph Barroso. That's Barroso. I'm also on Twitter. I typically don't tweet a lot, but I get my news from there. Sometimes I'll comment on things on Twitter. But, I'm on Twitter as well. That's at JLBARROSO22. That's my Twitter handle. So I'm on there. I help Pivotal Sport Management with some of their Twitter accounts, some of their social media accounts involving Twitter and Instagram. So I'm very involved. You might not hear a lot from me, but I'm definitely, checking in on tweets and everything. So yeah, LinkedIn and Twitter for sure.
Okay. Well, great, man. I appreciate you coming on the show. We'll definitely have to have you back on at some point. And best of luck, with the rest of your journey. And like I said, I look forward to talking to you again, further down the road. But, I just feel like this is a very powerful show, very powerful information. Guys that are out there and gals that are listening to this, you can stick around baseball. You can stick around softball. You can stick around whatever your sport is. At the end of the day, you just got to get with people who've done that and start to figure out what some of those answers to some of those questions are, and just get going. I mean, I think that's the thing that I take away from this call more than anything is, just don't take the classes. Get involved, get out there, meet people, build relationships, and learn, while you're actually in school, so that, some of these paths start to figure themselves out for you, and, you really get a better sense of what the market's all about. So, Joe, I'll sign off, man. Great talking to you. We'll definitely have you back on at some point, and, for anybody that's an aspiring, student athlete who's looking at this, I definitely encourage you to reach out to Joe. Thank you so much, and that'll conclude tonight's call. Thank you so much.
Thank you, DJ. I appreciate it.